Welcome back. Now that we've successfully created the data flow, we now need to execute the data flow from a pipeline. As we've already created a similar pipeline for processing the cases and deaths file, I would like you to do this as an assignment yourself and come back to the video only if you get stuck. Good luck with that, and I'll see you shortly. I hope you've successfully created a pipeline to process our data. I'll now show you how I went about doing this. Here we are in our data factory. Let's create a pipeline. And it's going to be click New Pipeline. And I'm going to call this as PL Process Hospital Admissions Data. Okay, now we need to create an activity to invoke our data flow. That'll be our data flow activity here. Let's drag that into the pane. And we got our data flow already. So let's pick that from the drop-down, and here's the DF Transform Hospital Admissions. And let's click OK. And if you remember, we didn't have to make any changes here, but if you want to adjust the timeout or retries or anything like that, we can do it. And in the settings, again, we could leave these as default because that's the smallest Spark cluster we could create. And that's everything we need to do. And let's publish this, and click Publish. That's now published. Let's do a manual trigger just to test the pipeline. So click on the Add Trigger and Trigger now, so we don't need to have a trigger, and click OK in here. And now, we can look to see what's happening. So that's the moment of truth. Click on the monitor. As we can see, the pipeline is running. Let's have a quick look at that. Click on the pipeline itself, and then that opens up the pipeline, and you can see the data flow is executing. And let's click on the details here, Data Flow Details. And as you can see, the data flow status is acquiring compute. So it will take about 2 to 5 minutes to spin up this Spark cluster and maybe about a minute or so to execute the data flow itself. So I'll come back and show you how we go on. Okay, the data flow has successfully completed, and it took about 2 minutes, 38 seconds to spin up the cluster. And in total, let's have a look how long it took. It took about 4 minutes 26 seconds to process the data together. So let's now switch to our Storage Explorer and have a look at the data. So our data was going to be written under the COVID Reporting DL storage account, and it was going to be underprocessed under ECDC, and there were going to be 2 folders. So one for hospital admissions daily and another one for weekly. So we can see both folders. So let's open up the daily folder and have a look at the data. As you can see, the data is partitioned because we didn't ask it to be written to a single file. We asked the data to be written to partitioned files, which is the default. So let's open one of these and click Open. And as you can see, the data looks good to me. So we got the most recent data because we ordered by reported date descending and country ascending. So that is the 25th of October, 2020. And we got the countries in the ascending order, and we got the hospital occupancy and the ICU occupancy data. Some of these countries don't report everything, so we have got some nulls here as well, which is okay. And let's close that one. And let's look at the hospital admissions weekly file. And if I open that one and click S to open it, and we got little data in this one, that's because the data is partitioned. We can't see the most recent data in this file. So which is the end of October, last week of October data, and we got the country, some of the countries. Not every country reports these weekly new admissions figures. As we know, we didn't have the Austrian data, we had the Belgian data. So, which we can see that, but some of the others will be in the other partitions. But I think it'll be good if we can write all of this data into single file to examine it. But remember, writing into single file is not the right thing when you're working with a distributed computing platform because having data partition across, you can distribute the data across different nodes and process them quite efficiently. But if you write all of the data into one file, then you are defeating the purpose of having distributed computing. But in order to check the data, we'll just quickly make a change to the data factory right into one file and we can see whether our data looks okay. So let's do that. Let's switch to our data factory now and let's go to Author. And that will be in our data flow, and we need to change the sync. It'll be in our weekly sync and it'll be under the optimized settings. We want to set it to single partition. And also, in the settings itself here, we want to write to a single file, and we are going to call this as hospitaladmissionsweekly.csv. Let's copy that. It'll be useful for the next one. So that's done. And we need to do the same change for the daily sync. So again, set the optimize to single partition and in the settings, output to a single file, and we are going to call this one as daily. And we also need to clear the folder so that the existing data has been removed before the new data has been written. So we need to make that change to weekly as well. We missed that. So let's go and do that for the weekly. And one more thing we need to make is to change the sorts as well to single partitions so that actually all the data is sorted within the file coming through. So let's do that in here. So click on Optimize and then make a single partition. So we've done the weekly to single partition in the Optimize and also the sort daily to single partition. So what that'll do is it'll sort all the data that comes out of that stream in the order we've specified here. So let's now publish and click Publish here. And that's now been published. So let's go to our pipeline and invoke trigger. So trigger now and click OK. And if we switch to our monitor, we should see that running as it is. And we'll give that a few minutes to complete and then we'll come back. Okay, the pipeline's now completed. So let's switch to Storage Explorer and have a look at the data. So let's have a look in the daily folder. So we got that file, let's download that. And I'll download that into a folder. While that's happening, I'm going to do the weekly as well. So let's download the weekly file as well. And let's now open the files in Spreadsheet. So that's our daily file, and it looks perfectly fine as we expected. So we got the reported date and we got the countries in the ascending order. So that's brilliant. So let's have a look at the weekly file. That's the one we couldn't figure out whether that worked or not. So let's open that one up. And we got the 18th to the 24th week. And as we can see, we got the countries in the ascending order as well, so, which is great. Both of them have worked. We have got some blanks here. That's because those countries are not reporting those figures. Apart from that, it seemed to have worked as we expected. So that's the end of this session. I'll see you in the next one.